Into it. Hey everyone, it's your friend Our Shawn, attorney Our Shawn McBride here with you today. We're going to be talking about the fundamentals of founding your company and what a corporation and LLC is. This is all being done as the McBride Attorneys Law Show YouTube channel. You can go subscribe there, check out other videos. But I also remind you, I am an attorney. I'm not your attorney by virtue of doing this video. I'm just going to talk very generally. You should go seek your own legal advice in setting up your LLC or corporation. But we're going to talk about why they start and what they mean and why they're so important. All right, so the fundamental issue with creating an LLC or a corporation is that you create a separate legal entity, right? So you have yourself over here, you have assets and liabilities, you're a legal person, and then you have your entity over here. They are separate in the eyes of the law. There's a division between the two. And why this is so important is if the LLC or corporation has a lot of liabilities, they can't bleed over to your personal assets, at least not directly. And I've done some videos on the limitations of LLC liability. In fact, I've done some continuing education for attorneys on that topic. If that's something you're interested in, comment below and we can specifically dive into when does this LLC or corporation not protect you from personal liability? When do things bleed over and what should you be specifically aware of where this liability risk is? But in general terms, this LLC or corporation is separate from you, and therefore everything that happens in your business is separate from you as a person. So this is great from a liability protection standpoint, because if something goes bad in the business, an accident, business operations go bad, losses pile up, contractual problems, etc., you don't have to worry about that. That's why everybody runs out to found that. I'll throw in a quick word of caution here with respect to partnerships. Partnerships, unless you set them up as an LLC or corporation where the partners own them, which is what I generally recommend for almost all partnerships, then they are not a separate legal entity under the eyes of the law. The liabilities bleed through to the owners, right? So they are an amalgamation of persons. They don't get this limited liability protection depending on how the state law is structured, right? We're not talking about any specific state here. We're talking very generally. But through whatever mechanisms, generally partnerships, unless they're formed as an entity with an LLC, corporation, limited partnership, etc. If they're just a partnership on paper where everybody agrees to it, through whatever legal theories that state has, they will generally treat the partners as being wholly liable, not only for their actions, but for the actions of their partners, which is huge, right? Because an LLC or a corporation, if you have it set up properly, all those liabilities stop at the entity level. They don't cross over to your personal assets. But in the terms of a partnership, if your partner goes out and has an accident with the company vehicle, guess what? Your personal assets are liable, right? The person who got hurt in that accident on behalf of the business is now potentially going to be suing you and putting liens on your house, attempting to liquidate your bank accounts, etc. So not a very good situation to be in. So how do you set up an LLC or a corporation? These are creatures of state law, so all 50 states have both systems set up. And you basically file with the state notifying them that you are setting up an LLC or a corporation. This usually requires a certificate or articles filing. The names vary a little bit, but basically you're telling the state, hey, here's our business name. We're setting up as a company, and we're going to be doing business, and we'll be formed under the laws of the state. And if you do business in another state, you sometimes have to do what they call a foreign qualification, right? That's a little bit down the line. But you pick a state. A lot of people pick Delaware. A lot of times it makes sense to use the state where you're operating. That's a whole other question. If you're interested in that, comment below, McBride Attorneys Law Show on YouTube, and I will respond. And if I get enough interest, I'll do a video on state of formation. So you pick a state of formation, you're formed under that state law, you become an entity. It's separate from your person. Right now you have two legal bodies, your LLC or your corporation. Let's dive in for just a second, because you're probably curious what goes on behind the scenes, right? You file a certificate with the state, but what else do you need? Let's divide it for the LLC and corporation. Again, talking in very general terms, talk to your legal counsel about the specific state you want to form in and what they need. But typically the LLC, you need that certificate of formation. Some states that will actually create your legal entity. Some other states, the better view is you also need an LLC agreement. I generally advise clients to have both a certificate of formation and an LLC agreement, regardless of whether the state actually requires the LLC agreement. Certificate of formation, usually very basic, skeletal, name of the company, where do you put paperwork if you get sued, signed by the founder. Very simple, right? A Delaware certificate of formation, in fact, is just that simple, right? Name of the company, where you file a lawsuit, signed by the founder, right? Very simple. The LLC agreement has more of a detail: who owns the company, who controls the company, who can vote, how do decisions get made, what happens in the event of a liquidation, how does money come in, how does money come out of the LLC, how do we bring new owners into the LLC. Really a lot of details about the operation. This is very important, particularly in partnerships, right? We talked about buy-sell agreements and other videos. You can check them out at McBride Attorneys Law Show. And we've seen that, right? So we do that kind of work and say, here's the partners, here's what they do, here's how partners get ejected, here's what happens if we disagree, here's how we would liquidate the company. All of that goes into your LLC agreement. So very smart to have that document. And it's good evidence in the event you have a disagreement, that you can go back to the LLC agreement and say, here's what our deal was, rather than relying on oral histories and oral recollections in a litigation, which is never a good idea. The other type of entity you have is the corporation. That's the other major one. There's lots of types of entities out there, but a corporation is kind of the older standard, but getting to be less used versus the LLC, because the LLC allows a lot of flexibility and freedom and liability protection. The corporation was thought to have better liability protection, but I see a lot of the cases shaping up that basically LLCs and corporations are getting the same liability protection. What do you need in a corporation? A certificate or articles, depends on the state. They'll call it something, but some filing with the state, name of the corporation, where do you file if you get sued. This also generally has basic information on your board of directors, who they are, addresses, etc. Work through that. Then you have what we call bylaws, which often talks about how does the board meet, how do the shareholders meet, how do meetings happen. So that's kind of your basic stuff for a corporation. And then you're going to generally have stock in the corporation. So you'll have some extra logistics, which you can bake into the LLC agreement on the LLC side, but on the corporation side, you'll have to do some stuff with the organizer, allowing the board to be set up, initially authorizing the stock, doing the first sale of stock. All of these types of issues will be happening over in the LLC, will be happening in the corporation document. So LLC, maybe two documents: certificate of formation, LLC agreement. Corporation, articles, bylaws, incorporator consent, stock certificates. You're probably going to have a stock ledger book. So you're looking at a lot more documents for a corporation, because the corporation is very structured by the state law, requires certain bells and whistles and check boxes. So a good lawyer will lead you through that, have a great checklist for you, and help you make sure you do all the stuff to comply. A lot of people make a mistake when they form their own corporation because they don't check all the boxes, but a good lawyer will make sure you check all the right boxes and get everything moving the right direction. Some lawyers who, in my opinion, aren't very sophisticated in this world will try to make an LLC look like a corporation, right? So they'll start bringing bylaws over, they'll start bringing stock certificates over, they'll do a lot of things to make a corporation look like an LLC. Really not necessary. A well-formed LLC under state law has its own structure and a lot more freedom and a lot of flexibility. So you don't want to give up that freedom and flexibility generally in an LLC unless there's some specific reason to make your LLC simple, make it easier to manage. That's the basics of an LLC versus a corporation. I'm sure you have questions, so I want to hear from you. Drop some comments, Our Shawn McBride on LinkedIn. Drop some comments at McBride Attorneys Law Show on YouTube. If I get enough comments, questions, ideas in specific areas, I'll dive into it. I'm here to help you guys get your businesses moving to the next level, and kind of get you through the basics so that you can really kick your business up. So that's the simple LLC versus corporation. Get you rolling in the right direction. Want to hear your question, McBride Attorneys Law Show. Pat yourself on the back for doing the hard work and being here. I really appreciate you viewing. Give me a thumbs up and a subscribe, and I'll catch you again very soon. All right, folks, Our Shawn McBride.